Hi again. In W.C. Stevenson, Year of Doom 1975, in North America called The Inside Story of Jehovah's Witnesses, we're in the chapter The Illusion of the Last Days. And in this chapter, he wants to conclude with a discussion of the Watchtower version of Armageddon. We've dealt with this extensively elsewhere, by the way, in our Revelation playlist. What does the Bible actually say about Armageddon? So if you want, check out our Revelation playlist to get our take and the church's take on what this battle is all about. Stevenson says, since the Battle of Armageddon is considered to be the climax of these last days, it may be worthwhile to complete this chapter with a word picture of what this battle will be like, based on the witnesses' own writings on the subject. In 1958, the Watchtower Society made a considerable departure from its usual policy and produced a book intended primarily for children and for use in more backward countries, called From Paradise Lost to Paradise Regained. It is printed in very large type with an abundance of pictures. It has been very easy for the witnesses to sell from door to door because it is presented as a book which makes the Bible so easy to understand that even children can read it with enjoyment. I must disclose at this point that this is the only Christian book, or a book that pretended to be Christian, that we had in our house when I was a child, because one of our close friends was, by this time, a baptized Jehovah's Witness, and she gave this to my brother and I as a gift. I think it must have been in 1958 or 59 when the book came out. So for many years we only had one Bible and one so-called Christian book in the house, and this was it. Of course, Stevenson is writing this from the perspective of the mid-1960s, so the book is still in use at this point. As a letter received from a highly satisfied purchaser in 1961 said, quote, "This book is written in such easy-to-understand language that it is now possible to answer many of the questions that my 3-year-old son is now asking me about God and all of his creations." That was reprinted with glee in the Kingdom Ministry in May 1961. Many parents, on superficially glancing through its pages, have assumed it to be merely a book presenting Bible stories with accompanying pictures, and have accordingly bought a copy for their children. The witnesses have very often presented this book just prior to Christmas for obvious reasons, although of course the witnesses themselves do not celebrate Christmas, denouncing it as a pagan celebration. But whether the book is a suitable Christmas present for children, I will leave the reader to decide in the light of what follows. The book is, in fact, just as much a presentation of the doctrines of the witnesses as any other of their publications. And for the most vivid descriptions of the Battle of Armageddon, it is without equal in the current range of witness literature. We are informed on page 207, quote, "Great will be the terror of Armageddon. Every kind of terror will be used to destroy this evil world. Cloudbursts, lashing rains, overflowing floods, earthquakes, giant hailstones, and a rain of fire. There will be terror on the land, terror in the sea, and terror in the air. So terrified will people be that they will begin killing one another. Many will be destroyed by a flesh-eating plague." Quoting from Zechariah chapter 14, verse 12, "Their flesh shall rot while they are still on their feet. Their eyes shall rot in their sockets, and their tongues shall rot in their mouths." The writer then grimly savors each detail of this revolting text. Eaten up will be the tongues of those who scoffed and laughed at the warning of Armageddon. Eaten up will be the eyes of those who refused to see the sign of the time of the end. Eaten up will be the flesh of those who would not learn that the living and true God is named Jehovah. Eaten up while they stand on their feet. Accompanying this horrific description of what the ever-loving Jehovah God is shortly to inflict on the vast majority of his creation is a full-page illustration which shows buildings collapsing, people up to their necks in water, houses on fire, crazed men fighting each other to the death, and the earth opening up as a vast chasm down which are falling numerous people, followed rather illogically by a bicycle, a motor car, and a set of doorsteps complete with handrail. All this is included in a book which purports to make the Bible so easy to understand that even children can read it with enjoyment. I am sure that no parent in his right senses would feel happy at the thought of his child's mind being infected with this sort of obnoxious rubbish. Apart from the sheer horror of the description, the unfavorable light in which God appears as a person of fiendish cruelty could quite easily poison the mind of an impressionable child, as well as giving him nightmares. To complete the picture, the writer informs us that after Armageddon, the surviving sheep of the New World Society will go forth to look upon the slain of Jehovah. It will certainly not be a pretty sight, because the writer adds, for our further edification, worms will not stop swarming over the millions of bodies until the last body is eaten up. Birds and beasts also will eat their fill of human flesh until nothing is left but white bones. That's on page 210. When the birds have finished their work, the Armageddon survivors, acting with the immaculate precision in which they have been so well trained in the pre-Armageddon days, will spend the next 7 months burying all the bones. Where an unburied bone is found, they will set up a sign by it so that the buriers will notice it when they pass by. This is based upon the scripture at Ezekiel 39, verses 12 to 16. It seems almost incredible that anyone could really believe that God will destroy 2 billion people in this way. Of course, this is 1965 or so when he writes this. And we are now 7.5 billion, leaving by comparison a mere handful on the earth to make a fresh start. But Jehovah's Witnesses do, most sincerely, and that is why they preach with such fervor. Time is running out, they believe, and anyone who dies at Armageddon will never be resurrected. He is forever destroyed. So it is vital that the life-giving message reach as many as possible, as soon as possible, that all the sheep may be gathered to the right side of God's favor. And again, these descriptions, which are based upon Zechariah 14 and Ezekiel 38-39, are about a specific situation that will develop, not about a global destruction of all but Jehovah's Witnesses. So yes, I'll put in a link to a video Vivian did on this text, because she was born in 1960, so this was, the Paradise book was the childhood book that registered with her as to what Armageddon was all about. And it was used that way well into the 70s, by the way. I'll also put in a link to the first of our Armageddon corrections, and that's in our Revelation playlist, which I'll also put on your screen. So we have several videos about Armageddon in the Revelation playlist. The first one is therefore on your screen, and the Revelation playlist, which I think now is somewhere around 100 videos. Check it out if you haven't already, because we give also at the first phase of that playlist a history of their publications on the subject of Revelation's interpretation. They didn't always believe this. In fact, Rutherford's version of Armageddon and Russell's was quite a bit different than this. See you next time.